Hello, viewers. You're welcome once again to our Facebook Thursday Facebook Live series. Today's topic is okay. Like you can see on the screen, my name, and you already know the rest. So today I'm going to be taking the topic your rights as a patient. And first of all, I'd like to start by reintroducing us or defining the meaning of a patient to the barest minimum so that anyone can understand without prior knowledge who a patient is. So, a patient is anyone who is ill, who has any form of medical condition, who goes to the hospital to receive some treatment. And thank God to the era we are now in because okay, unlike before where a lot of patients didn't know their left from their rights, due to technology, from so much reading, so much exposure, we are now a lot of people are now familiar with their rights as patients, and like experts would say, they say that some patients have become overnight doctors that they no longer look out to doctors like beggars who are looking for handouts. Like right now, patients are like kings that they know they are left from their right. So doctors treat them and should treat them as the kings they are. Okay, not like we're king anyway, but like to understand what I'm trying to say, like you are fully aware of your right. So no one is going to treat you anyhow. But in any case, I'm still here to give you more insight to maybe some of the things you already know or the things you don't know yet. So, um, we already know that okay, as in Nigeria right now, there are a lot of there are a lot of laws, there are a lot of regulations with regards to rights, your rights as a patient, and there are federal laws as much as there are state laws. Some states have their laws with regards to patients. Even some medical facilities have their rules and regulations as the right pertaining to the rights a patient should be accorded. So I'm going to start with saying I'm going to start with introducing us, for those of us who do not know, introducing us to the of to the Bill of Rights, Patient's Bill of Rights that was recently introduced by the CPC and the the Federal Ministry of Health. So there are so many rights enshrined in that bill as per what your rights are, and these rights are can be these rights are the rights are as follows: access to information, access to emergency care, right to have visitation, your right to refusal of care, confidentiality, quality of care, dignity, um, right to informed consent. Okay, I would like to narrow all this down and explain them to us one after the other. Okay, first of all, I'm going to be telling you the reason if the reason if a patient's rights are important. A patient's rights are important so that a patient's rights are important because in as much as you're a patient, you're also a Nigerian, and we all know that in our constitution, uh, there are particular rights that should naturally be accorded to every human being. We call them the Chapter 4 rights. They are our fundamental rights, which are enforceable anywhere. And some of these rights that facilities, state governments, federal governments have are also enshrined in our constitution. So whichever rights that you have is enforceable. As a patient, you can enforce them. But like I said the other time I took a topic, I said a lot of Nigerians take things for granted. Some things happen to us and we just look at them like, okay, it's just this, so let's just let it pass. Like why would I go to report? Why would I go to make this statement just because someone refused to tell me the implication of taking this drug? Why would I? That's actually critical. I don't know how you see it, but it is your right to know, to have the knowledge of whatever treatment any doctor or any medical practitioner wants to carry out on you. It is your right, because a lot of people have lost a lot of things. Okay, I know of someone who lost an eye because she went to the hospital and the doctor says, "Oh, you have cataract. We are going to operate on you." And okay, the doctor carried out the operation, and without really explaining to the person. And right now, like, the lady has just one eye right now. So there, and you, as a patient, you also have the right to to reject or refuse any form of treatment. Okay, like I said, I'm going to be taking you down the lane one by one, all the rights I've made mention of. So I'm going to start with access to emergency care. So every patient has the right to receive urgent, immediate, and sufficient attention and care in the event of an emergency, prioritizing such needed attention over other factors included costs and payments, as well as law enforcement requirements. So in this with regards to this rights, what I'm talking about is, as a patient, you have every right to be given emergency care and treatment. No hospital has any right to make you. Okay, I'm going to explain this with an example, with a scenario, something that happened, a real life situation. I think that was, yeah, that was last month, August. There was an accident in Federal University of Agriculture, Makurdi. A student Some students were involved in an accident. The vehicle that conveyed students from the school gate to the main campus had lost its wheels, had bad wheels, and now collided with jumped into something. I think it gutter, now pushing some students into the gutter, injured some died on the spot, and one particular student was still alive, and she was rushed to the school clinic. There she was, and when they got there, the students got there, and the medical practitioners, the school clinic medical practitioners, were asking someone who was about dying to produce her clinic card. Like, how does that make sense? That's absolutely wrong. So in this scenario now, okay, with a lot of students telling this man that this person is a student, this is our faculty, we know her, this is, but they were into what they wanted. Like, they saw value in frivolity, and that they should have seen in saving the life of someone. So if I'm linking that to this right now, access to emergency care, I would say that the students that needed urgent attention was supposed to be given that urgent attention without need for anything, even payment, deposits, at least for then, deposits, any form of identification or whatever, so long as at least there were people saying this person is a student. Even if there were no people saying this person is a student, first of all, life is paramount. So they were supposed to give every urgent attention to the student. However, the student was allowed to die. So it's really disturbing. Like, it still disturbs me till now, and definitely we are looking into that. We're going to do something. We are doing something about that. So another right I want to talk about is visitation. Every patient has the right to be visited, um, including for religious purposes or for whatever purposes. But this visitation has to be in line with the rules of the healthcare center you are in. Like, some healthcare centers would say, we don't receive visitors from 8 in the night to 11 in the night, stuff like that. We don't receive visitors from by from like 6 a.m. to from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. But whatever, you have the right to be visited. But however, it should be in accordance with the rules of the hospital. The most important thing is there should be no restriction whatever to your right to having people visit you. So another right I want to talk about is patient's refusal of care. Every patient at all times retains control of their person and must be informed of their power to decline care upon full disclosure of the consequences of such decision. Patients have the right to consent. Patients have the right to refuse any form of treatment. As a medical practitioner and you have a patient, you should at all times explain to the patient whatever procedures, whatever treatment you feel as a medical practitioner is good for the patient's condition. And the patient at all times has unrestricted right to say no to that. All you just need to do is to explain to the person what this is, what that is, and the person has every right to say, okay, no, I don't want, or yes, I want. Then I know a question that may pop up in your head is, what happens when the patient is incapable of giving of saying what the person wants or what the person does not want? In that case, a family relate a family a relative or a family member who um brought the patient to the hospital has responsibility to take care of the patient, can be informed, and with the right consent of the person, the patient can be treated or still not treated. But the point is, every patient has the right to refuse or accept any form of treatment, which can also be called consent. Every patient has the right to informed consent. For whatever procedure you want to carry out on any patient, the patient has the right to say, no, I don't want, or yes, I want. Okay, I remember that was when I was much younger. I had a cousin. Yeah, he's late right now. So I had a cousin who had malaria or so, so he was taken to the hospital and without proper explanation. And this my cousin, he used to have usually when he takes um any drug that has a particular ingredient in it, he would have rashes, and he would, like, he was very allergic to one particular one type of drug. So the okay, that was chloroquine or chloroquine, yeah. And this doctor did not explain very well to my cousin, neither did he explain to his parents. He gave the drug to him. My cousin took the drug and had serious and intense allergic reactions. It actually affected one of his eyes. It was really bad, and that was a long time ago. And that was when Nigerians were still so into, no, it's just this. Like, why would I be stressing myself to go to the hospital and do this? Like, it's just this. Why would I? But I'm sure right now a lot more people are getting informed that they shouldn't take their rights for granted. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is, every patient has the right to say no or yes to whatever. And mind you, surgical procedures or operations are not exceptions. They are not exceptional to this case. So, whatever it is, whether to save the life of the patient or not, the patient, so long as he or she is in his right frame of mind, the person has the right to say yes or no. Except the person is in coma or whatever, the person is not in the frame of mind, or has a mental illness that the person cannot accurately say yes or no. Then, like I said, in that case, you can you can explain that to a relative or a family member of the person who has responsibility over the person. So another right I want to talk about is complaint. A patient has the right to lay complaints of how um, of everything and anything the environment, treatment and care from the nurses or the doctors, whatever it is, a patient has the right. In as much as the person is paying you to be there, the person also has, aside that fact, like I said earlier, when I talked about emergency care, I said you should not subject the patient to to compulsory deposits of a certain amount before treatment can be started or resumed. So, like, okay, going back to what I was talking about what I was saying about complaints. A patient, even if the person hasn't made any payment, still has every right to lay any form of complaints about how he or she is feeling. It is unrestricted. And going by the Hippocratic oath that doctors take before they are inducted, I'm not a doctor, yes, but we all know that, okay, most informed people know that that Hippocratic oath has so much involvement with with vowing to take lives more seriously than your physical or material needs. In other words, you should not take value money or police reports or any form of material thing over the life and well-being of a patient. So another right I would like to talk about is right to confidentiality. Every patient has the right to confidentiality. As a patient, you go to the hospital, the doctor looks at you and you explain to the doctor whatever is happening to you. The doctor, you converse with the doctor or any medical practitioner there, even the nurse, any medical practice, any person working in that hospital that is treating you or that is there, and you kind of say some things, maybe you divulge a secret as to your health to the person is under compulsion not to give out that information to any other person. The person has no right to tell the next person about your medical condition. It is your right, and all these rights are governed by our constitution, different federal laws and state laws and facility laws and regulations, like I said earlier. So as a patient, you can say whatever it is to the doctor and expect not to hear that from any other person. Any medical practitioner going contrary to this is going against your rights as a patient. However, there there are exceptions to this right of confidentiality. The law requires it to be disclosed. Any compet The law requires it to be disclosed where, for example, a competent court requires your medical history or your medical reports for something. Like I said earlier, note I said any competent court. So if there is a case involving you and the court requires for that particular case that your medical and it has and your health is an issue to that particular case, the court can order that your medical history or your report be um, be brought to court for the purpose of that case. So in that case, it is accepted. It is not going against your rights as a patient. And also, your history or your medical report or your medical situation can also be divulged for the public interest. There are so many situations where okay, for example, I'll talk about the Ebola case. The nurse for example, the case of the Ebola nurse who ran to Enugu after being diagnosed with Ebola virus disease, her records were made public for public safety. Ebola that period it was viral, it was so scary. There were a lot of easy ways to contract it, even unlike HIV. There were a lot of easy ways to contract it. It was even more deadly than HIV. So there were different measures that the public, the medical practitioners and all those involved in public health and safety were there were different measures they were taking to combat this Ebola disease. So one of the ways was that if you were found to have that disease, you were to be quarantined. And in being quarantined, you were to be taken or put away in a in a separate place from where you can have contact, we possibly have contact with any other person not having the virus. So in that case, the Enugu-based nurse, the nurse that had it, um, realized she had it and she ran away. So, and her records were made public so that anybody who sees her or knows her would know, okay, this is what is happening to this person, and maybe you can report to the government, to the authorities, and should be held to put in to be quarantined, or you avoid her because it was a menace that were looking at combating. Like, we were really looking at eradicating it for the public, for the good of the nation. So in that case, her records were made public, and the nurse in turn cannot sue, or whoever that finds him or herself in that kind of situation cannot possibly report or say anything about someone going against her rights or his rights, because for the interest of the public, your reports can be made public. So, another thing I really want to talk about is the part I talked about, informed consent. I really want to talk a bit more about it. And I say an informed consent is a voluntary agreement to a medical procedure. Since the doctor is in a fiduciary capacity in the relationship with the patients, it is necessary for him to let them know everything concerning the procedure. It involves explanation of the procedures to be followed, description of any discomfort or risks to be anticipated, disclosure of alternative procedure that may be used, reminding the patient that he has the right to withdraw his consent or discontinue treatment at any time. So, explaining this further, I would like you to know that for whatever, like I said earlier, I've talked about it before, but I just want to like put more details to it. So for anything you are, even if you are to be given an injection, you have every right to know what the injection will do, its contents, because you may know what you react to, but the doctor doesn't know. So, like I used the instance of my late cousin. If the doctor had explained to him what happened to him, wouldn't have happened to him. So you have every right to detailed information about whatever, even if to the best knowledge of the doctor he thinks is to save your life, you still have every right to know. I'm talking about consent. Even in the taking it now um a bit far, when I would say, I also want to go digress a bit by saying, even when it has to do with a HIV patient, you have you have every right to give consent for testing or whatever. No medical practitioner, no one has any right to subject you to any form of testing or anything without your consent. In other words, consent is paramount. Even outside these rights of a patient we are talking about, a person's rights a person's right to consent is paramount in every and all situations. Now, I also want to talk about that failure to obtain this consent from a patient before a procedure would make the doctor liable in torts or assault and battery. And misrepresentation of the facts of the procedure will also amount to battery, even if it is to save the life of the patient. A doctor must not psychologically manipulate a patient into having a particular medical procedure. A patient's rights cannot be abridged with the intention of protecting him. That's like what I said earlier. Even if the doctor feels he's protecting your life or whatever, he still needs your consent. And without your consent, if without getting your consent, he's going against your rights, which rights can be enforceable. Now, I also want to talk about, there is this new law that was passed. that was enacted December last year, December 11th, if I'm right. December last year, and the the name of the law is compulsory treatment for victims of gunshot wounds. That law, that act, talks about the right of a patient, not of a gunshot victim, not to be to be treated without the doctor or the medical personnel requesting for police reports, deposits, and all. And it also talks about how you have you nobody has the right to subject you to any form of degrading treatment. That act is something we should really all look at, because though, okay, like I wrote an article, though I haven't yet published it, I talked about how good the act is, and I also went ahead to condemn the act in terms of it not being all encompassing. They only limited it to gunshot wounds, and it would have been so lovely if it was to affect every other type of injury and wounds, because we see this on normal basis, on a daily basis, like they happen every day. And one of the rights I also want to add that I missed out earlier is your right to dignity. That is paramount. And I said earlier that as a human being, even aside the fact you're a patient, there are rights that must be accorded to you as a human being, at least as a Nigerian citizen. So, because we're in Nigeria, we're talking about Nigeria. So, there are some rights that you have that no one should take away from you, no matter what. So, as a patient, you have rights to dignity, and no one has any right to subject you to any form of treatment. No one has any right to harass you. No one has any right to talk to you in any degrading way. No one has to. No one has to do anything that would affect your dignity. So I also like to add that. I also like to add that even if you are unconscious, nobody has the right, because in most of these federal hospitals, I have not been to a federal hospital before. I heard that because of the, I don't know, because of the crowd and everything, that the medical practitioners are not very, they are not very cordial in their interactions and their relationships with their patients. And it is wrong, because like I said earlier, even if you haven't made your payment, so long as you're a patient, no one has, because you're a person. So aside the fact you're a human being and you have these rights, you have gone a step further by being a patient, and you also have your other rights. So being a patient does not negate the fact that no one should subject you to any form of ill treatment. Now, I hope we have been able to grasp every nuance of details I have put out, and I hope to see your questions. We have limited time. This program is only scheduled for 30 minutes, and I really hope to see your questions wherever, because I'm already running out of time. I have like a minute or two left. So I'm really hoping to see you get your questions, and believe me, I'm going to reply to whatever question you have with regards to this. You can always send a message after the put it on the comments in the video, in the live video. Thank you. I'll be really waiting, and I'll be so glad to respond to you. Have a nice day.